Hey there, everyone. Mychal Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology with yet another question and answer segment where practicing astrologers bring me their questions and I provide them answers based on my astrological practice.
I have a couple of questions, but I'll be quick. I think that this one might be a yes no. Can outer planets be combust?
No.
Okay, great. Okay. Uh, is aversion between the celestial houses, sign based, and the terrestrial houses? It can be in one and not the other.
So the question has to do with aversion and whether or not we consider planets that are in aversion to each other purely based on the signs they're in or if the houses that they're in comes into play as well. When we talk about aversion, we're referring to things that have no aspect with each other because they're either in signs that are adjacent to each other or they're in signs where they have a 150-degree distance between each other. That's what we refer to as aversion in astrology. It is either going to refer to planets that are in signs that have a semi-sextile relationship or planets that are in signs that have a quincunx relationship to each other. Within traditional astrology, the houses have a set of relationships to each other that is fixed. So it doesn't matter if the sign on the cusp of the first house and the sign on the cusp of the 12th house are the same sign, the 12th house is still considered to be a bad house. And planets in the 12th house are still going to be considered to be in a bad house. The same is true in terms of if we have a planet in the first house and a planet in the sixth house, those houses are in aversion with each other. And the symbolic definition we get for that aversion is that the sixth house is representing a place of sickness, whereas the first house is representing a place of health. So that is an aversion between those houses. However, because we know that signs aren't houses and houses aren't signs, a planet can be in the first house and in a trine relationship to a planet that's in the sixth house. Because a person can have Leo on their first house cusp, and they can have Sagittarius on both their fifth house cusp and their sixth house cusp. Clearly, this wouldn't be the case if we were talking about something like whole sign houses, but since we're not talking about whole sign houses, we could have planets in houses that traditionally have an aversion relationship to each other, but the planets, based on the signs they're in and also based on the degrees of those signs, can very much be in aspect with one another. So when we're talking about this topic of aversion, we never really need to talk about house-based aversion unless we're practicing something that involves whole sign houses, in which case that's another thing entirely. But when we're talking about planets that are in an aversion-based relationship with each other, such as the semi-sextile or the quincunx, and everybody knows that I think the quincunx is 1,000 times stronger in impact than the semi-sextile. If we're having that sort of relationship between planets, wherever they are, you could have planets that have a quincunx relationship with each other between houses that technically have a positive aspect with each other from a house perspective, but the planets in those houses can be having a very challenging relationship. For example, you could have Leo on the first house cusp, you could have Sagittarius on the fifth house cusp, and you could have a planet in Capricorn in that fifth house that's in complete quincunx relationship to a planet in the first house. And that's because if we're practicing from a quadrant-based house system, then the planets can be anywhere and the signs can be anywhere, which is why we need to have an understanding of aspects based on planets and their degrees, as opposed to having an understanding of aspects based on houses. Because we don't always, and we don't even often, find that planets that are in houses that have one type of aspect relationship with each other actually have those same aspects when we look at their zodiacal degrees. So we really need to base our entire understanding of how planets interact based on their zodiacal degrees, even though the meanings of the houses are exactly what those house meanings are as a result of this doctrine of the aspects that the various houses make to the ascendant.
I think what I understand is look at the signs. If they're in adjacent houses, 12th and 1st, and they're in the same sign, they're not in aversion.
Right.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I hope you enjoy our Q&A segment, and if you have astrological questions that you'd like for me to answer, then please feel free to share them in the comment section down below.